Hi, I have been not modeling and I have been trying to make a bit of space inside, and that means some models have come out, so I might as well show a couple of them again. So this one I've only shown in 1 or 2 videos, a little bit dusty. My nice Hellcat. Which is certainly one of my better finished models. I'm just checking. Nope, that undercarriage has actually that has now picked up a slight bit of damage. That has picked up damage. This is the reason that I actually don't like including any of the sticky outy things, because it's all fine and well as long as your model doesn't get handled. There's lights underneath, which may not exactly be correct, can't remember. But since I have 3 Pacific schemes here, and they're all a little bit different, I'll show you them. You can make up your own mind. So this Helldiver is not finished yet. Look how big that is compared to a Hellcat. How can I? So, okay, if you want to compare the blues close up and the effect. Now keep in mind this. Okay, wait, I'll first show you this. So that's that one, which has got its own appeal, a much more sedate and faded, whereas the Hellcat is far brighter. And now I will show you these two together. I do like that Corsair. It does lack a little bit of something, and this has got a little bit excessive of that something, which is the panel highlight. So if you'll remember, I discussed in a video long ago, with this aircraft this is not chipping technique, but this is sanding technique. The aircraft was painted in some type of silver, and this has got the raised rivets, and then the blues and all of that, and then a light sanding till the silver was just shining through in some cases. In some areas not. It leaves a gap there because that's where the wing join was, and that's a bit unfortunate. You know, when you clean up where the wing joint was, you lose the rivet detail, and it does sort of stand out a little bit. You've got this total gap in that raised sanding. Now so the problem with that is that silver is a little bit too bright, and the correct color for that would have been a more mid-gray, light gray to medium gray. So not metallic. Not metallic is just a little bit too harsh for that. Underside. See, underside on the darker panel I did the silver, but underside on the white panel I did a probably the plastic color. Difficult to really say. I suspect that's just the dark blue plastic color coming through, but that looks a lot more acceptable. So it's quite nice and smooth to the touch, but you've got all of the detail. In fact, all of this is. So all of this is very smooth to the touch, and yet you've retained all of the detail because of that sanding technique. But and it will look nice when it's finished, but it'll look a little bit overdone. It's a little bit too shiny. That, I must say, does look very nice. That's a little bit too bright. That looks pretty good. I do like that. Anyway, that, you know, this one was not too serious. This is Monogram, Experiment, and if I do another one, I'll do it better than that. By the way, I just brought this. I'll have a look at this Skyraider now, but I just wanted to show this Helldiver and Skyraider, virtually the same. Skyraider and Helldiver. Helldiver actually a little bit longer, but I'll have a look at that shortly. The Corsair, while having very nice surface tones, lacks the effective demarcation of panels, which really should have been done in a little bit different, little bit of tone differences. And I can still do a little bit of a wash in some of the panels, but you've got to keep it really careful at that point. So I do have the browning, which looks sort of interesting, even if not totally realistic. And the tone differences that I do have look okay. So I do like that. This one was meant to be pretty. I do think I got the panels quite nice, but it is a very... It's sort of realistic looking according to all the pictures, but it does come across as quite a shiny blue. And then I found, and I'll speak about this one a little bit, this model, which I took a little bit of time to look at this one now. This is the Impala, the Yamaha 326. Which I did this it was more than 5 years ago, probably 5 to 7 years ago, I think. And I looked at it again. This has been sort of hiding, waiting for attention. It needs undercarriage, canopy, and I think that's it. Yeah, just undercarriage and canopy. Now this has got a, I think it has, I'm hoping it has, can't remember, a clear coat on it, so I'm hoping it's somewhat safe to touch. While I like this kind of weathering, it is very appealing, there's a part of me that likes this very heavy effect, way abandoned, even if the specific effect is just not realistic for what you may ever find. So I'm very happy with what I got there, but I can't remember how I did it. The top surface is a sort of a fair bright aluminium look. The bottom surface is not. That is a shinier dark look. It's almost a black steel look. Or if you want a dirtied aluminium, even though I don't know if you can actually get that. The two wings are slightly different, but I very much like this. It has removed the shininess, and I think the top could have benefited from a bit of that. And the nature of the removal of the paint I wish I remember how I did that, because I'm going to have to try and reproduce this on, might not be on actual aircraft, could be on armor, it could be on sci-fi, it could be on an old car. Oh, sorry, and decals. But I think that's sort of also where I stopped with this, is if I just apply one decal and don't weather it properly, consistent with the surface, it's going to look a bit weird. It's going to look out of place. So I need to think about how I apply that. So sort of a minimal interior, very worn and dirty. So this is probably by far my best old weathered attempt. Now, this is not for everyone. A lot of people will sort of look at that and say, no, well, that just doesn't look good. These look far better. That's, you know, that's where it's at. That's good weathering. But I can tell you that my modeling is headed more in this direction. In fact, I almost see this as only the medium of what I'd like to achieve on some models. So now this does use the hairspray technique, that's obvious. So it has a, even if it has Alclad or Humbrol, doesn't matter. And then it's got a sealed layer of a varnish, possibly a Humbrol varnish. And then, now let me just think. I don't think that would have been the floor spray varnish that I used, the floor acrylic. I think that it would have been a proper Humbrol varnish. I'm just trying to judge the layers as I speak here. Okay, so then it would have had this specific gray. Oh, sorry. So it would have had this metal spray, but a variation. So I would have added a little bit of black in some areas. That's why you get this wing is somewhat more black. I should have done more variety of that, but I very much like that. In fact, in the light, this wing is actually also very appealing, sort of a tarnished effect compared to the upper surfaces, which are a bit more shiny. So we have this basic metal variation sealed with varnish. Then we've got the grey, and the grey also needs its variations. In fact, the grey, now I can't remember, again, I did this too long ago. I possibly used 2 tones of grey, close, but I think I should have used a bit more. And with this particular aircraft, I didn't attempt to do its actual scheme and then weather that. That would probably be even nicer. Then, sorry, hairspray, then the greys. But the hairspray in this case, because the thickness of your hairspray determines a lot, and the thickness of your grey afterwards. That grey, by the way, has to be acrylic. The grey on top of the hairspray. Though, don't quote me on that, it's possible that you can get away with enamel. Might have to try that on a little test piece. So in this case, but because I've ended up removing so much of the grey layer, I'm trying to estimate whether the hairspray would have been thicker or whether the grey would have been thinner. If the hairspray is too thick, you end up just removing way too much. This would have been rubbed with a damp cloth, not scrubbed, I don't think. It's possible it would have been scrubbed. I wish I'd remembered. I wish I'd documented. This was long before I started the channel. So we will try this on another model soon and see what we can get. Then when you have rubbed off enough of the grays or whatever final colors you want, so that you end up close to the finish that you want, you can then do one of two things. You can start rubbing. Now you'll see there's browns into the oils. Those would be oils that I have very lightly and delicately rubbed into certain areas. You can see the, can't remember which one. I'll try and remember to bring them out here. Very minimal, just to create that effect of dirt. And I think I did keep that somewhat to the light side. I'd like to go heavier on another model. Bit of rubbing with the oil. Now when you do that, when you put oil onto a surface, you then cause a problem for yourself to do a final varnish layer, because the especially water-based is going to repel off the oil, which means I might have done a light floor spray, or I might have done nothing. We might actually be sitting here with an unvarnished model. So I'm going to have to do it again. I like this one very much. I will finish that one. I'm not sure that decals are the right thing for this, because I think there's just no way that you could handle equal aged decals onto this aircraft. Now if you imagine that on that or something similar, so I'm going to have to think about what aircraft I can actually do that on, but I think that's one of the lines that I'd like to pursue going forward. So a couple of questions to answer. If you can't spray the floor wax over the oil, then the one thing you can do is do the light acrylic coat of floor wax before you do that final oil weathering. Now I am seeing somewhat of a semi-shiny surface, so I might have then done the oil after that, and that would be the correct way. You let it dry and then you do this light bit of oil weathering. That does mean that the oil is not sealed under anything, but it doesn't really need to be. It's a little bit wet in the beginning, meaning it could still be rubbed off in the early stages. And you get a very nice weathering effect by using multiple different types of oil. I've got a lighter yellow one there, so I've definitely used up to 3 colors here. So we'll do some experimentation with that. And definitely a tank would appeal very well on this, even if it is impossible to actually get a tank in that type of weathering. It's not, for me, it's just an interesting visual effect. Oh, and the second question is, how can we get decals onto there? So you spray your metal surface. You can do this one of 2 ways. The one way is very time consuming, and that is you'd have to spray all your decals with an acrylic in the same way that you sprayed that grey coat, so that your decals, they're not decals, so that your markings can then be deteriorated in about the same way. The other method is that you can attempt to damage your decals, because you're not going to get rubbing off through a decal. Once that decal is in place, that's a protective layer over this effect that you're going to be achieving. you could, that might work. You could do your silvers, do your metal colors, and silver's the wrong word, your very toned down metal colors, ranging from mildly bright to black metal. It's not quite black, it's a darkened grey metal. Put on all your decals, but they have to be put on very well, very, very nicely flat. You want to try and avoid any of these ridges at the edge of the decal and the carrier film. Varnish the aircraft with the permanent varnish, with the enamel varnish. Then spray the model in the greys or whatever final colors, such that your grey actually covers the decal. Now, if the grey isn't strong enough, or if your final colors aren't strong enough to cover the decal, that might still work partially in your favor, in that you're going to have a decal peeping through. But what you actually want is an aircraft like this, which you don't see any of the markings. Hairspray, sorry, when I say spray it grey on your final colors, I mean with the hairspray prior to that, so that when you do this rubbing off, you're exposing some of the markings. So rather than having damaged markings, you're having partially exposed markings. That's probably the way to go. You can try that on one. We'll see how that goes. One of the options is the Skyraider, because I don't particularly want a nice Skyraider. I want a very heavily character presence on my Skyraider. So I'm quite keen to do that, at least on one of the Skyraiders. So we might do that. Monogram Esky Skyraider. I've got another one. So this could be done in, well, what are the scheme options? Is that just the one? No, we've got, okay, we've got, and that. So this is Thailand 1970, that could work. Thailand 1972. And all I'm really looking at there is a very nice camo scheme, which those have, and they've got the letters and minimal USAF marking. So actually that could work pretty well. But I mean, it's certainly worth it for a trial, because what we don't really want is a large USAF decal which actually shines through the grey, and then it looks as if you've partially exposed something, and then it doesn't look like it was actually worn. It just looks like half bright, half covered. So I think that'll be a good one. And it's not a very complicated, I mean, look, a lot of this is racks and weapons. So if I take out, I can include these, I could include those. Is it worth it? Is it worth actually including them on the undersurface? That will hamper my rubbing off. So I'm sort of okay by not putting that on. If we take off the tanks and the weapons, I mean, this suddenly the parts count drops by half in here. We've got one piece horizontal stabilizers. I would close those panels, air brakes in. One can even leave the prop off in a case like this and just have the engine and cowling in place with this very, very aged and weathered look. Canopy, and I hadn't planned it on the Impala yet, but canopy very yellowed and crazed, and to be honest, that saves you doing, I mean, it's not there's hardly anything to see in there, so it doesn't even really matter. You're covering up, saving yourself some cockpit work, but there's so minimal it hardly matters. Very minimal engine wear, a brown spray, you know, little, very easy to weather an engine to look in a bit of a messed and forgotten state. So that's a good one. Now what else I could do a helicopter fuselage. Oh, here's that would be interesting if I could do it on that. I'll show you now. So that's the one option, which is sort of appealing. This is bright. It would look interesting, but that's quite bright. And I'd almost want to use those on a nice one, but the question is, am I ever intending to do a nice Skyraider, a high quality finish Skyraider? And then this is, you know, that's very good for this technique, and that blue can work nicely. So that's very good. That's very good. Now, since I have two Skyraiders, would I do the other one in a good fresh scheme? Probably not. I'd probably do it in a differently heavily weathered scheme. Okay, and so helicopter body, armor, I think armor, some armored vehicle, this, and something else which I'll dig out. Easy builds, but very, very good mules for this. And when I say mules, it's not like I'm actually experimenting with the eye to losing the model, anything but. They probably turn into my best finishes ever. So very, very interesting. I just dug that out. I mean, I've sort of known that I need to get back to that at some stage, but almost rate that as my best finish ever. And where am I going to put these models? I have no idea. One last thing for today. With this talk and looking at these models, I'm getting more keen on this now. The Wellington has been one that I've paid such minimal attention to, and this model is grabbing that attention now. And we briefly discussed the option of a half model. I don't like things cut away to the extent of being half models. It would work, but you know, the displayability, you know, okay, you position it this way or you position it that way, but it doesn't quite have the same feel. And so what happens to all of this interior? Meaning you don't want to lose it, you don't want to waste it, but how much really is visible? And it isn't visible unless you do something to make it visible. But it's not the sort of model that you can build a separate interior model. I mean, you could leave that out of the model and put it all on there, I guess. In this side view, so obviously that you won't see any of that. And what closes that? That's the window panel, but why am I not seeing that? Oh, they've provided it, okay, sort of as a, I didn't mention that in the previous one, so they've provided the side windows in a single piece so that you'd have to cover and spray certain areas over but leave the others, so that's quite well done. End result anyway is that closing the bomb doors, and from the side view alone, the exterior view, honestly, there's nothing. Now, you can put LEDs on the inside. That changes things a little bit. You've got a little bit of a view inside there. You've got minimal views inside, but could that work? Building all of that interior and then relying on LEDs to actually show it up? Maybe, because I don't have a better option at the moment. So if I do this quite nicely, and you could even do quite a nice photo set, putting it in a dark setting. You'd have to control the LEDs though. I think I've mentioned in previous cases that if you put bright LEDs inside and you just have this powerful light pouring out of the inside, it it looks closer to a Close Encounters type of thing than just the moderate lighting inside an aircraft. But that's easy enough to achieve with the resistors and choice of light. So in this case, yellow lights would be my very first choice, definitely not the white. A white LED is just too bright. Green is a bit too modern instrument panel. So a yellow and or covered in an orange cellophane or whatever it is to bring down that to the sort of orange glow that you see from lights from a distance in a house, for instance. It's that sort of effect you want, just dim light. So undercarriage down, close the if I leave the bays open, you're going to have a lot of light pouring out the bottom. When I say a lot, you're going to have a little bit of light pouring out the bottom due to that, which is its own little effect, but I don't think it's an effect I really want. So close it all up with that. Take off all of those individual doors. Build the interior. Install LEDs, and this would be 1, 2. You see, what you do here is you position up to about 5 LEDs, even more, 5, 6, 7 small LEDs, with the eye that you can test them. I mean, of course you test them, but when the whole thing is finished and you've got your wiring and you actually position it and you're ready to take your photos, you might find that putting on certain LEDs, this one from the front, that one from the back, this one from the middle, 2, 3, 4, certainly not all at the same time, gives you that desired subtle lighting that you were looking for, and different sort of lighting effects, one in the cockpit area, one shining away from the back. So position up to about 7 LEDs and have them on micro switches that you can switch on, switch off, and end up with a very, very nice photo setup. And I have been meaning to build the 3D printed hanger, the trusses, which somewhat lend towards the Wellington shape, because you've got this triangle girder on the interior of a hanger, big enough for a Wellington. So we'd be talking about quite a big hanger. But you know, once it's sort of designed and your 3D printer just rolls them out. When I say roll them out, I mean each truss does take an hour to print, probably, I'm guessing here based on the amount of time, but it's not that big a deal. Eventually, when you start, you lay out all your sides and everything, and you get corrugated iron for the roof sections, and put in a little bit of dim lighting in the roof, and put your Wellington inside there and take photos from the front. I think that you're looking at some of the best model photos that you could imagine. So I am rather liking this this plan for the Wellington. If I've sort of got a mental plan, you can also have a little bit of light coming out your turrets as well. But it just has to be the absolute subtlest of lighting, which is what you don't get in this picture. You don't have any hint of light coming out of there, for good reason. They're in flight, but that would be a very interesting look. And I think it would look far nicer that way than just, you know, average lighting like we have here. Okay, that is a good and interesting little bit of discussion. So it'll be a while before we actually get to the next one of these, but that's something that I've hardly discussed, and I've only done, I'm trying to think if I've done another one. I mean, there is probably something somewhere that I've done, but so that's, I'll just leave that there, and we can even have a second look at that. Okay, happy modeling. Cheers.